Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and from what I've been told, emulation is getting a lot better. I'm always having the conversation on my channel about obviously retro video games and retro collecting, and I talk about the experience that you get when you play retro video games on original hardware. And most of you who follow the channel, you understand how passionate I am about playing retro games on original hardware. But every time I have this conversation, I do get a number of emulation enthusiasts who come into the comment section arguing points, and whether it be for emulation or how emulation is just as good, if not better. Now, I am not the expert on emulation, right? I only have one real emulation device, dedicated emulation device in my collection, and that would be the Analog Pocket. Now, you might consider the mini consoles emulators as well. You might consider a Super NES Mini, or a Sega Genesis Mini. You might consider those emulation consoles as well. And if you do, well, then I guess I have about 4 or 5 different emulation consoles in my collection. But I don't have anything to where I'm downloading emulation software, where I'm running ROMs. I don't have any devices in my collection that force me to actually get technical on that side of things and install software that allows for better running emulation. However, again, as I said, I always get those emulation enthusiasts that come into my comments explaining how much better emulation has gotten and how much fun it is for them to emulate the same games that they see me playing, whether it be on my live streams or just some of the retro games that I showcase in some of these 8 to 10 minute videos. But the thing is with that is that there's a slight issue, right? Because I get emulation enthusiasts arguing me from the perspective of gameplay, and gameplay alone, right? So as a collector, yes, I do enjoy the gameplay. I love the gameplay of retro video games, but I'm also a collector, right? And telling a collector that they don't need to collect games is like telling a painter that they don't need to paint. They could just go to the store and buy something that's already been painted. They don't need to paint their own pictures. They can just, go to a Target and buy one of the, pre-done paintings that are hanging on the wall for $9.99. A big part of the hobby of collecting is actually collecting the games, right? And so if you're a collector slash game player, collecting is a big part of the hobby for you. In fact, it's just as important as playing the games themselves. And I think sometimes for the folks that have converted over to emulation, they I don't want to say that they miss that, because a lot of the folks that do emulate today are former collectors. They're people who maybe at one point used to collect, but either they no longer saw the need for it, they got over it, they ran out of space, they were transitioning away from that point in their life. Maybe they were just done with the hobby. And so they decided, you know what, they're going to sell either all of their collection or part of their collection and just emulate the rest. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Every time I do a live stream on my channel, one of the first things that I suggest, especially if I'm playing an expensive game, is I recommend that people try to emulate the game if they can first. I wouldn't recommend you spending hundreds of dollars on a game. In fact, last night I was streaming Lords of Thunder for the Sega CD, and a lot of people that were in the live were asking like, "Man, what game is this? What game is this?" And I told them, I said, "Yeah, this is Lords of Thunder, but I wouldn't spend the money on it because it is a $300 game. If you really want to play the game, there's a TurboGrafx version that you could play on the TurboGrafx Mini, but even the TurboGrafx Mini is still $200 to $250 used." So I did recommend, if they just want to experience the game or try it out, I recommended that they emulate it. The problem is when you get the emulation enthusiasts who try to shame collectors. That's the problem that I think happens when it comes to a lot of folks who emulate. It seems, the commentary comes off as some type of shame. Like they're viewing collectors as idiots who are spending why are you spending so much money on physical? You're stupid. You should emulate. That's where I think things get a little bit chippy, because it's like a to each his own, right? To each his own. Just because you got to a bridge in your life that you had to cross where you had to make the decision of either keeping your physical games or selling them, and you made the decision to sell your physical games, it doesn't mean that anyone who still collects physical video games is dumb. um, I think that there is a strong case for emulation, and I do think that, based on what's being told to me, that emulation is getting better. There's a lot of devices out there that give you a great gameplay experience. There's a lot of devices out there that allow you to save a lot of money if you're strapped for cash. But we're all in different situations in life. And I think sometimes people look for validation. I think people make decisions, whether, and this is just in general, people make decisions about their collection. People make decisions about what they've decided to purchase. People make decisions about what they're going to sell out of their collection. And then once they make that decision, they seek validation. And it happens on both sides of the fence. You have people who spend a lot of money on physical games and then seek validation on the internet by showcasing all of these games and hoping that people will say, man, you've got so many games, you're awesome. And when people don't, they kind of feel invalidated, and they don't feel like, they it's a little bit of a deflating experience. But if you're buying physical retro video games looking for validation from other people, or hoping that people will validate you as a retro gamer or a collector, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Everything you do in life should be for you. And so you do have those people who collect for validation. But then I think the same thing happens on the other side of the fence. You have people who maybe they once had very large collections, but they went through life changes and they could no longer keep the collection, and they decided to sell. And then once they sold and switched to emulation, now they're like online seeking validation for that decision. And one of the ways they seek it is by going into the comment section of any and every video that talks about physical retro games, trying to invalidate the need for retro games. Listen, none of us need any of this stuff. None of us need physical retro games. None of us need emulation devices. If you're too old and too busy to play physical retro games, I'm going to assume you're too old and too busy to emulate them too, because the same amount of time is being spent, in most cases. So a lot of these trivial arguments that are made on both sides of the fence, to me, come off as efforts of seeking validation. You want someone to validate the decision that you made to either buy or sell a video game. And I think we need to just stop doing that. If you want to make a case and say, well, you know what? Here are the facts about emulation, and you can benefit from emulating this way, and this way. I think that's great. And I get tons of recommendations for emulation devices, emulation software, things that I can use to emulate as opposed to breaking out the physical hardware. And I appreciate that. But when you start making an argument that no one's having with you, like you're arguing with yourself in the comments, trying to fight a case that no one's asking you for, in favor of emulation, you wind up looking like a person who's seeking validation for your decision to sell your retro video games or go the emulation route. And again, that's not what it's about. You don't need anyone to validate your decision as to how you collect or play video games or what you decide to do, because it's going to be different strokes for different folks. You're going to have people, you have plenty of people who have physical collections and they emulate anyway, because it's easier for them to play their games via emulation, but they still love the joy of collecting. They value having certain pieces of games in their collections because they're collectors. That's what collectors do. We collect. And so when you come to a collector arguing emulation, you're arguing with the wind, because you're arguing a point that no one asked you for, especially a collector, right? So I think we have to stop seeking validation in either direction. If you're a person who enjoys collecting physical games, do it for you and have fun. If you're a person who likes to emulate, do it for you and have fun. If you have a wall of games behind you, you shouldn't be trying to make anyone feel smaller or less than because they don't have $300 or $400 games in their collection sitting on the wall somewhere. That's corny. But what's also just as corny is trying to invalidate someone for having a collection because you decided you either couldn't afford or you didn't no longer had the space for physical retro games and you had to emulate. And so now anyone else who's still buying is a dummy. That makes no sense. And again, you come off as a person who's looking for people to validate your decisions or co-sign with your thought process. And we're all adults here. If you come in the comments and tell me you're an adult, act like it. Man up and take responsibility for your own decisions and stand by your choices. Don't seek someone else to support a decision that you made, hoping that you'll feel better at night because someone said, like someone gave you a thumbs up in the comment section. It makes no sense. But that's my Sunday morning sermon for you guys. Let me know down in the comments. Are you team emulation? Are you team physical hardware? And if so, why? Give me facts, not conjecture, not anecdotal opinions. Give me facts. Or if you're going to give me facts of why you decide to do it. You know, what is it about physical retro games that makes it important to you? Is it experiences from your childhood? Is it the nostalgia that you feel? Is it because you're able to find them easily? Or are you just rich and you can just buy all the retro games you want? Let me know on either side of the fence, and let's keep the comments polite. But that does it for now. It's the Y2K Collector. I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.